I look at your free agent signings, your coaching changes, and the first 3 draft picks is how I've always judged the Monday after the draft. So I just said, I think the Denver Broncos, between DJ Jones, Randy Gregory, Nathaniel Hackett, Russell Wilson, and the first couple of draft picks, including Nick Bonito, the super athletic edge for Oklahoma, their defensive line is going to be much more athletic, much more dynamic. Obviously, they moved to an offensive side of the ball. I don't know much about George Payton. Jason Garrett's a friend of mine, the former Cowboy coach, and I had a conversation about 2 months ago, and he said, listen, man, the guy's smart. He's a grinder. He's a good dude. Just my takeaway is I went back and I looked at the Denver Broncos over the last, this weekend, obviously. I think they've hit a home. I think the Jets with Joe Douglas and the Broncos with George Payton have hit home runs in their GM search. And by the way, John, you can't go to college to major in NFL GM. Sometimes it's luck. But those 2 guys in the last couple drafts, damn, John, they're good.
And they also drafted the fast tight end from UCLA, right? Because they lost Noah Fant, so you replace it with the guy that can stretch the defense, up the middle of the field. I think over the last handful of years, I know you're buddies with Ballard, there's been a couple guys that the league kind of universally agreed, this guy's going to be a GM when he chooses to, and he's going to be really good at it. Now, the difference with an assistant GM, right, is like you see an offensive or a defensive coordinator, so you kind of see their work, but you don't really know what an assistant GM's doing. But everyone talked up Chris Ballard, then they talked up George Payton. He'd been turning down jobs. Now, to me, your 2 biggest moves as a general manager is obviously your quarterback, finding the quarterback, also the head coach. We'll see. I mean, I think we're going to find out about this coach. It's not like he was some can't-miss coaching prospect.
Right.
Now, UC Davis guy, really smart, comes from a football background. His dad obviously was connected with Bill Walsh and Joe Montana. So it's not like this guy came out of nowhere, but you can feel he's got a high energy. He's kind of like an offensive Pete Carroll. I was told I called a buddy in the league, I think probably 5-6 days ago, and he said he worked with someone who'd been around Nate Hackett. Obviously, everyone likes the guy. And he says it's either going to be awesome or it's not going to work. And it's just, there's not much in between, I think, sometimes with the high energy, high kind of motor guy, which is kind of the new end or the new age coaches, right? Not the surly Bill Parcells type guys kind of dying.
Yeah. The Eagles made a trade for A.J. Brown. The Niners didn't on Deebo. And I'm just wondering about this. I saw a quote about a week ago where Kyle Shanahan said, I really hope we keep Deebo. And there's this perception that Kyle and John Lynch are close. But I think they'd be less close if Deebo Samuel was dealt. And John's track record as the 49er GM has been a mixed bag. There's some misses and there's some hits. Yeah. How do you view, I get moving off Deebo, but I do think he's a stupendous player. My concern is if you pay Deebo and Kittle big money, they're both injury prone. That could go sideways by week 6, and then you got bags of money and nobody playing. What's the relationship, do you think, between what did you make of the Niners draft and the Lynch-Kyle current relationship?
Yeah, I think they made the right move because I think Deebo's value is pretty unique. You saw the potential Jets offer sucked. Pick 10 for Deebo, and you got to pick, your second round pick. So it didn't make any sense for the 49ers to make that move. I also think A.J. Brown had more universal value on the market to every team. He's a big outside wide receiver. Deebo, he's not a gadget player, but you need the right coach to have Deebo Samuel. Now, I think where it's George Kittle, because he plays tight end, doesn't make that much money. His guaranteed contract, I think, was well under $40 million. So they got lucky that one of their star players, that position kind of gets screwed in the market hierarchy of NFL of paying players. But they're about to pay Nick Bosa, who we all see what the edge rushers make. He's going to get, basically a quarterback contract, right? Making $25 million a year with true guarantees of, $105, right. $110 million. So it is a complicated situation. I do think the money that A.J. Brown got, $57 million guaranteed, is kind of team friendly. You see some of these numbers, $75, $80 million. It's not that much. Now, he is 24 deep, same with Deebo, or I guess Deebo's 25, but he's been injured. I do understand the reservations from the 49ers, but how many guys do you know that you can win playoff games with? And he's one of those guys. Like when you step on a game to play another team in January on the road, he can be the best player that for a fact. The other thing, he's a good guy, like great energy guy. He's not a negative guy at all. He's very positive. I think him, Kyle, and John love Deebo Samuel. And they said something, I think after maybe their Thursday night press conference or Friday night press conference, is when the season ends, the players there's a separation for a long time and you spend a lot of time on your phone and a lot of things get said. They said, we know the guy, we didn't just meet him last year. We've been around him for 3 years. We're pretty confident. And this is also why these younger coaches, their relationship with players really matters. I think the old days of Walsh and Parcells and even what Belichick still is, get rid of anyone at any moment. That's not really how Kyle and McVay kind of operate, because they're actually much closer in age to some of these guys. And through their actions, they feel even younger than 40 years old. So I think it'll all get worked out.
Malik Willis drops to the Titans at number 86. Obviously, NFL general managers, who knows if Kenny Pickett goes in the first round, if Pittsburgh and the Panthers and the Steelers don't share facilities. I mean, that some of that felt like they'd seen so much of Kenny Pickett that they drafted him. What was the NFL saying about Malik Willis? I mean, what they were saying, Howell, the UNC kid, in the 5th round, I think.
I struggle with the word dropped. I mean, did a lot of teams have him viewed as a first-round player? He had some first-round attributes, huge arm, athletic guy, but as a player, he was not very good. And this notion, though, Josh Allen was 6'5.5", ran like Cam Newton, and could throw the ball out of the stadium. I mean, he's a pretty unique case. So if we're always going to use him as the example, I think a lot of teams aren't comfortable with doing that. I think both him and Desmond Ridder went where they were supposed to go. We act like there's something wrong with going in the 3rd round. I mean, most humans that play the sport of football never sniffed the NFL, let alone get drafted. Going in the 3rd round is still pretty impressive as a quarterback.
Right. Russell Wilson went there. We know
Dak
Brady,
Prescott,
Montana.
4th rounder. Yeah. I mean, Kirk Cousins. Like, I just think there are only so many picks in the first round, really the first 2 rounds, right? And a large percentage of teams have quarterbacks that they've recently drafted or guys under big contracts that they're not going to draft a quarterback. So the percentage of teams that are going to draft a rookie quarterback high is already cut by 50%, maybe even higher. So it's a small percent. We act like every team is in the mix. It's just not true. Look at Tennessee. They could have taken a quarterback, but they easily could have not. I just think they saw value there. They have a starting quarterback. It makes a lot of sense. Same thing with Desmond Ridder. What's his comparison? Kind of like a Mariota type guy, right? Arthur Smith, Reed kind of resurrected Ryan Tannehill, athletic guy. Good spot for him.
I want to I'll ask you one more draft question, then I want to get into some NIL stuff because I think it's fascinating. So, when I looked at the draft overall, it didn't have any stars, but I saw Isaiah Spiller go in the 4th round of the Chargers. He was super productive the last 2 years, 6 foot 220, Texas A&M, big, productive.
Can run. Yeah.
Oh, and I'm like, it can't be that bad of a draft. That guy went in the 4th round. There was also a player, a safety for Oklahoma. He's small. It's a hyphenated name. I apologize. I forget his name. He went in the 5th round, and I'm like, oh, he'll make the league. My takeaway was if there would have been 4 quarterbacks in this draft, would we have looked at it differently? Did your people as a former scout say, I was told players ran out, late 5th, you ran out of players. But I don't think it was that weak. I kept going back round after round after round. I'm like, God, Isaiah Spiller was fantastic for A&M, and he went in the 4th round.
I think the majority of the drafts, like after pick 100 to 200, are relatively the same. You're going to find Pro Bowl guys. You're going to find all-pro guys. You're going to find really good players. But the draft ebbs and flows with the power of it at the top. And obviously, last year was pretty unique. You had the Jets going to take a quarterback at number 2. The 49ers made this historic trade. Belichick was going to take a quarterback. The Chicago Bears ended up with Justin Fields, who became very polarizing. All the star power from the position players. So I think that's why the draft, and I saw you on Twitter talking about why the ratings were down. Well, 8 teams didn't have first-round picks. San Francisco, major market. Chicago, major market. Denver, major NFL market. I mean, why would you even watch the draft if your team's not even picking? And some of these teams didn't have 1st or 2nd round picks, like the Raiders, like the Broncos. So it was a unique draft in terms of how many teams had multiple picks really high. But I'm with you. Like, you can get good picks. I never have huge takes on like 4th, 5th round players because you go to enough training camps, you watch enough preseason football that undrafted free agents, that's the unique part about football, right? All of a sudden, by the second week in training camp, you're like, I think we might have a starting guard as an undrafted free agent or a starting safety. Happens every team, the good ones and the bad ones. So, I think the pressure and the hype gets put on the top guys, but you can always find George Kittles and Richard Shermans. It happens in literally every draft.
Okay, I want to ask you one Warriors question because you're Bay Area oriented, and I'm going to ask you an NIL question. So let me pivot to NIL. Jordan Addison is a really good receiver, Biletnikoff winner, and people are freaking out because they're saying it's tampering. And to that I say, you do understand that your college football coach currently was under contract when another school contacted him and then he left. That's how they get your coordinators. That's how you got your coordinators, is that Mel Tucker had a contract. And then Jimmy Sexton, who probably represents him, calls Mel and says, Michigan State wants you. So your coach, if you love your coach, he had another job and was under contract. I do think the NIL's a little off the rails, but the NCAA is so weak. The management division is so weak that they're just not prepared for this tsunami of transactions. I do think over time it will be, the guardrails will go up a little bit. I think you won't be able to transfer in the season. Now you could transfer, if you're a Michigan Wolverine, the week before Ohio State, you could transfer to Ohio State. I think that'll be buttoned up. And I think the name, image, likeness, you'll have to be a current player. You'll have to have 3 games under your belt as a college player to get paid. You can't just, we don't want boosters buying high school football players. But the Jordan Addison situation is interesting because my takeaway is the Pitt Panthers are maybe a top 25 program. L.A., Lincoln, Caleb Williams, biggest college football brand west of Texas. I get it. I'm not outraged by it. It doesn't, I'm like talented people in tech, broadcasting. I found you. I mean, we went and, where are you at? We found it. We figured out, how do we buy him and get him over? I'm in the process of doing that with another broadcaster. He's at a company. He's got a contract. I'm trying to bring him into the volume. I'm not bothered by it, but I do think a lot of middle America thinks this is gross and is totally turned off by it.
Yeah, to me, this one's pretty black and white. If you just started a volume 2.0 and you didn't take me, I'd have to start looking at my options. Now, this guy lost his quarterback. This guy plays receiver. His quarterback just went 20th. His most valuable, you are my most valuable asset with the volume. You are the proponent behind this thing, and it's shooting like a rocket ship. This guy won this award with this quarterback that went 20th overall to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That guy's gone now. Last I checked, Pittsburgh isn't pumping out a lot of top quarterbacks. So right. He's transferring not to a program that doesn't know their quarterback situation, which most people view as probably him, the Alabama guy, and Ohio State guys, 3 best college quarterbacks. So why wouldn't you go play with one of those? Look at Jamar Chase 2 years ago. Did he sit out because he didn't want to play? No, because he realized LSU was a dumpster fire and Joe Burrow was gone. If Joe Burrow had returned, do you think Jamar Chase probably plays? I think specifically at quarterback, when you're so tied to production and catching the football, it's out of your control. I think this one's pretty easy. If you told me that he would also been in contact with Alabama and Ohio State, I wouldn't be shocked at all. Why wouldn't this guy worry about his future? It's a business decision that, given the rules, they're a little crazy right now. I think we all acknowledge that. But given the rules, I think most people in his situation, what if he can't say this because this guy's teammate technically, if he's like, God, the backups on this program stink. I'm going to lose value. Why would I stay?
By the way, I had a executive in the NFL tell me after the USC spring game, he said Caleb Williams would have gone number 1 this year. He'll go number 1 in 2 years. CJ Stroud probably goes number 1 next year. He's like, Caleb Williams is going to go number 1 in 2 years. Players aren't idiots. No. Jordan Addison knows. You watch him play, you're like, my God, he's 20.
I heard a story last year that other programs were sniffing around at Kenny Pickett. Notre Dame wanted him to come be their quarterback last year. I mean, it's happening all over the place. Some people are choosing to leave, and some people are choosing to stay. It's a decision he made, to me, the right one, because especially with Lincoln Riley and this quarterback, can you imagine the stats this guy's going to put up, especially in the conference? God. I mean, it's going to be fantastic.
All right, one Warrior question. I thought there are times you win a game and there are times you win a series. I thought the fact that the Warriors won, Draymond's ejected, the officiating was at best laughable.
That was bad.
Klay Thompson, brick too late free throws. They moved the ball brilliantly. How many open three-pointers did they miss in the last 4 minutes? 6? I thought Memphis had to win that game. I felt like, oh, that's the series. Like that was my interpretation. What did you make of the effort?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's unique about the NBA and baseball is the series. A devastating loss game one can really cripple you when ultimately Memphis is the underdog. I mean, they're playing a team with championship DNA. How about playing the Warriors now? And, Klay is still coming back, and who knows if it'll ever quite be the same. Steph is still one of the greatest players we've ever seen. But they have a third splash bro, Colin. They have this guy that at any moment can go for 30 points. I mean, can you think how unique those guys – we'd never seen anything quite like Steph and Klay. And I'm not saying this guy's ever going to be quite Steph or Klay, but he's right now pretty damn close. I mean, just banging threes in these big – how do you guard them? Think of what it took from their center hitting all those threes. That's not happening very often. And that's part of the reason that the game was so close is I don't even – what Jaren Jackson finished with, like 35 points. Felt like he hit 7-8 threes. Like that's not going to happen again. And they get – Draymond – people love shitting on Draymond because his stats, especially in the regular season, it's been proven now the regular season NBA is pretty irrelevant. But Draymond, if you know what you're watching with the NBA, is one of the most special players we've ever seen, given his team and for them to lose him. I thought the Warriors were screwed this game. They're just gonna have to win. Win game 2, get back to Chase, and then take it from there. For them to come out, I mean, you talk about. Imagine if the Chiefs and the Bills, that was like a 3 or 5 game series. The Bills would never have been able to come back from that loss, right? How does Memphis come back from that loss? I mean, they took the lead late. It felt like, oh, they're going to lose it. And like you said, he clanks the free throws. I don't know. I mean, and Memphis clearly really talented. Their coach, who kind of has more of doesn't he look like an NFL assistant coach, an NFL offensive line coach? That beard is kind of hefty. But that's a tough one. Now, I'll give Memphis credit. They have a lot of fight. I mean, the kind of the ethos of the franchise, right? Just the guys they've had over the years and even this group.
Right.
But I don't know, man. You would say game 2 would be absolute must win for them if they're going to get this thing to 6 or 7 games.
By the way, check it out. Draymond Green, his podcast, it is up. Go to the Volume Sports YouTube channel. He is amazing. He is the hardest working pro athlete with a podcast today. He is so good. And, what's great is he always has something interesting to say. He's not just blabbing. Like, he goes back, and it's fascinating. I mean, he's breaking down plays. He's breaking down steals. Draymond is the next Charles Barkley. That's what he is. He's the next Charles Barkley on television.
Yeah, he's just he's a one-off. I mean, they just, Charles, there hasn't been another Charles. There's not even close to another Draymond Green. And can I rant about something really quick?
Sure.
This guy, I was part of your podcast network with Notre Dame. I had an NFL exec say that, the old scouts used to get very mad when a guy wouldn't participate either in the 40 or just in a specific drill during the draft process. You're not competing. You're not getting it done. And this guy's a younger executive. And he always thought, like, that's pretty stupid. Like, this is ultimately a business. Like, you make business decisions. Every human does. And Kyle Hamilton ran twice, and it didn't go well. You were I forwarded you a text and got you on a text chain with an executive before the draft process started. He, like the majority of the league, thought this guy is easily a top 5 player in the draft. We all watched him at Notre Dame. But then he ran slow. And once the card is on the board, it is hard when you see 4.65 or whatever he ran, taking a guy really high. So you're naturally going to drop, right? It's like putting a house on the market. The inspection comes and something comes up weird. It doesn't mean it just might have to fix that, or it actually might not even be a big deal, but it lessens the value, and it hurt his value. He dropped to 14. Drake London, who I like, never ran, refused to run, which was smart. I give him credit. If Drake London ran, he'd run a 4.6. Name me the last time a wide receiver goes in the top 10 that runs a 4.6. So I think some of these guys, and I respect anyone that competes and tries to run a 40, but Kyle Hamilton 100% would have been better off if he just never ran a 40. And it's part of the stupid part about this whole draft process, but it does. We always talk like 40 times shouldn't matter. Well, it does. I mean, it impacts you, and it led to the Ravens getting, arguably top 5-6 player in this draft at 14. Happens every year.
Yeah. Yep. Great stuff. By the way, they got the best safety and the best center at the 14th and I think 25th draft spot. They also got Lamar Jackson late first round. Like, some teams have just figured out how to draft.
They're good.
They're really, really good.
They know what they're doing.
John, great seeing you, buddy.
See you, Colin.